Well, hello, good evening, and welcome back to AOPA's Pilot Information Center webinar series. Thanks for joining us this evening. Our topic for this webinar is Flight Planning Tools and Tips, Delivering the Future Today. The webinar is brought to you by Lockheed Martin. For more information on their service, you can visit the website at www.1800wxbrief.com. Just like the phone number you should already know and love to call and get your telephone weather briefing, it's just online, 1-800-WXBrief.com. My name is Ferdy Mack. I'm here in AOPA's Pilot Information Center in Frederick, Maryland. Joining us this evening for tonight's webinar is Joshua Sessions. Good evening, Joshua.
Good evening, Ferdy.
Joshua is a systems architect on Lockheed Martin's Flight Services. He has a software engineering background and has been working on air traffic systems since 2001. And transitioned into flight services area in 2012, where he's been a lead engineer on the 1-800-WXBrief.com enhancements, including the next generation briefing tools and the other advanced flight planning tools as well. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Ferdy.
So a show note here before we get started with our main content. We will be able to view and respond to your questions this evening for our viewers via chat. There should be a chat box in your participation window in the bottom left corner, or in the bottom where you can submit your questions. We'll do our best to try to answer those as we go. We do have Heidi Williams also here with us this evening from Lockheed Martin to help work with those questions. And whatever questions come to us in large quantity, we will try to aggregate and answer those either as we go with the content, as they're applicable to what we're covering, or we'll try to fit some in at the end in a little Q&A session as time allows. And also, whatever questions we don't get to, our friends at Lockheed Martin will be collecting that list of questions and assembling answers for the participants to view at a later date. Finally, I did also want to mention Kathy Donzilla is in the wings here this evening as well. She's our production manager on our webinar series. Thank you, Kathy, for all of your hard work. And with that being said, I think we're ready to kick it off. So Joshua, tell me a little about what we're going to talk about this evening.
Thanks, Ferdy. So this is a continuation of the previous webinars that we had. We had 2 webinars we had given in the past few months. Joe Daniele had presented those. He presented kind of our core functionality and then subsequently followed up with another one with some of the advanced capabilities. So this is a continuation. This is building upon some of those things, trying to give some more information on these capabilities that we didn't have time for in the previous webinars. Specifically, I'm going to go over some of the briefing features, talk a little bit about unmanned aircraft systems, operations, drones, and then get into some of the pilot tools to let pilots know what capabilities are available, and then talk a little bit about the app vendor services that we offer.
Great.
So I'll jump right in. So briefing features. So these are a couple things that we didn't get to in the previous webinars. And so just wanted to show you, when you go to 1-800-WeatherBrief.com, you're presented with this page. And there's a bunch of information on this page. We provide weather information, airport information, diagrams, and all available before you log in. We show some of the featured capabilities you can see, and then some of the partners that we have with different services we offer. And then the bottom, news and announcements. This is always updated when we have new things coming in. Like we have a webinar on the 10th. Announcement.
Coming up.
Yeah. And what we have highlighted is the login. So where you enter a username and a password. And this is to get in the more advanced services, filing flight plans, getting briefings. So I'm going to show that in order to get into the briefings.
And it was great, by the way. Last time we covered the fact that you've kind of moved where the high water mark is as far as what you can versus can't do before you log in. It was great to see that you had kind of advanced the front and allowed users before they even log in to approach the website and use some of the more basic features that aren't tied to their profile.
Yeah, we're very happy to do that. We have all the information, and our purpose is to get pilots the information that they need. And the things that you don't need to be credentialed to get to, we've made easily available.
Right.
And so after you log in, you are presented with a pilot dashboard. And this is customized based on however you log in. This first row where it says optimize your experience shows some of our advanced services and whether or not you're registered for them. So in this case, we're registered for easy activate, easy close, close reminders, ATC notices, and then partially registered for SUSAR. And right underneath that where it says no current flight plans is where you would find flight plan information. You file a flight plan, you've got a scheduled briefing, that's where that information would be. And then below that where it's weather and airport conditions, this is all customized based on your login. You want to see a certain weather graphic, you want to see a certain location with this radar overlay. You customize it so you can see what you want. When you come in, you can click on it and get a more detailed picture of that. And then just below that is the airports you can save as your favorite. And what we do here is we actually show the METARs, the TAFs, and the NOTAMs for those airports. So you have easy access to this information based on what you want to see before having to drill down and get a full briefing.
It's handy. It's almost too obvious. You know, one of the places that I often go for weather products is aviationweather.gov, and oftentimes I'll simply type that URL in. Sometimes I'll use a bookmark, but sometimes not. And when I go to aviationweather.gov, I'm still 2 or 3 clicks away from one of the 3 or 4 various weather products specific to my region that I'm actually interested in. Mm-hmm. So it's nice that once I log in, boom, right there I can configure and get exactly what I need. I don't have to, it's not, each detailed weather graphic specific to my region isn't 2 clicks away.
Yep.
It's all right there.
Yep, and try to make it easy to access, and then easy to escalate as you want more information. And the other thing next to these airports we have configured, you can get a briefing for the airport, which get a full briefing that just includes the area right around the airport. That'll include the METARs and everything. Whereas from this quick view, you can get the overview of the graphics and then detailed NOTAMs, TAFs, and METARs. But what I was going to talk about, once you're in the pilot dashboard, one of the briefing capabilities I wanted to show is a scheduled email briefing. So to get to that, once you're logged in, if you hover on the flight planning and briefing menu item, and then select the briefings, flight plans, and nav logs, and that'll bring you to the flight plan form. And we've seen this before in the prior webinars. It's basically the flight plan. You use it for filing, for briefing, other advanced capabilities. But for this case, we're going to talk about the scheduled email briefing. And what I've done was pulled up a favorite. So after you fill out the form, you can save it as a favorite. So the next time you come in, you can bring up the favorite, and it's pre-populated based on what you had saved: airspeed, altitudes, departure route, destination, time and route, contact information. Really the only thing you need to, if everything else is the same, the only thing you need to change is the departure time. In this case, we set it to 2300 local time. And then to get to the scheduled email briefing, on the bottom is all the buttons for briefings. The fourth one in is scheduled email brief. And so what this capability does is lets you request a briefing to be emailed to you at a specific time. And the way this works is once you click that scheduled email brief, you get a window to customize how you want the briefing sent and what you want it to contain. And the first thing is to set when you want it sent. And presumably you'd pick a time between now and your departure time.
Or presumably at least a time in the future. We'll start with that. Yeah.
I wanted it an hour ago.
Right.
And then you figure out where you want it sent to. And it will default to whatever login you have logged in. But you can add someone else or just change the email for who will receive the briefing. And then you can select if you want all the content or if you want to just select individual items. And then I wanted to point out that if you request the scheduled email briefing to be sent more than 6 hours prior to your departure, it turns it into an Outlook briefing. There's certain data that's just not relevant that far in the future, so you'll just get Outlook-based information.
Which, of course, isn't a limitation of the email briefing feature. It's simply a function of the way briefings work in general.
Yeah, Outlook briefings. And then you pick what briefing content you want. And if you want a full standard briefing, you select everything and you'll get everything. Or if there's things you don't want to have to go through or you don't want to clog up the email, you can deselect some things. If you don't care about high turbulence because you're flying low, or if you don't care about the historic METARs because you just care about the current ones, you can deselect those. And then after you've customized it, then you would click the schedule email. The one thing I want to note is that once you make these settings, we save them. So the next time you come in, you get a scheduled email. All your settings will be saved the way you left them. with the one exception of the adverse conditions, because of the safety implications, we include those for every briefing by default, but you can still turn them off. We just won't save that off setting because we don't want to make you think that there's not an adverse condition when there is.
But meanwhile, irrespective of the adverse conditions checkbox, everything else, as you said, is saved, just like many other areas on your website where you, Lockheed Martin, are going to do all the heavy lifting, remembering what I as a pilot prefer and may have selected in the past, and you're going to do everything you can, where appropriate, to bring that, resurrect that again, and put as minimal burden as possible on the pilot to have to enter any new relevant data.
Exactly. And that's one of the big things we've gone through as we've advanced the briefing, is to customize it for what it is that's relevant to you. So you can focus on what is important to you as the pilot. And we save those settings and we use those, whether you want it things in plain text, whether you want things organized away. We've tried to advance that to make it easier because our goal is safety. And the more information that we can provide that's relevant, the better off you are. Mm-hmm. And the more that we can help you limit so you're not looking through stuff you don't care about, the safer you are.
The old 50-page printout we were talking about earlier. Yep, exactly.
Okay, so once you click the scheduled email, then at that designated time, an email will wind up in your inbox. And we'll let you know that. And then, so I've taken us back to the pilot dashboard, and you'll see that now there's an entry for this briefing. So previously, there was nothing. Now we show that you have this email scheduled, and it gives you some of the details. And if you want to see more details, you can click the Select an Action. And from here, you can change those settings you had selected, or you can cancel it. But I just wanted to give this as a demonstration. If you file a flight plan, it will be in this list also. But this is a way that you can manage this email that you schedule. And
I figured it out by looking at the slides earlier. To the right of that arrow where the email icon is, where it says TTTJD001, that's actually where that's the tail number field there, right, I believe?
Correct. Yeah, this is Joe Daniele's test flight.
Right.
All right. So that's scheduled email briefing. The next thing I wanted to talk about was a briefing change alerting service. So when you get a briefing, you go through the briefing, you learn everything, and at some time later, you take off. So what happens if something changes between that time? You went through everything and when you take off. Mm-hmm. That's why we implemented this briefing change alerting service. And this is the same for any briefing, whether you get an airport briefing, an area briefing, an Outlook, a standard, or the scheduled email briefing. You have the capability to request briefing change alerting service. In the example I'll show, it's taking a standard brief. And if you notice, this is our briefing window. And for those familiar with it, it's organized in a tab structure at the top, starting with adverse conditions, with a sub-tab of TFRs. And in this briefing, there's no TFRs. But if there was, you would have the text on the left, you'd have a graphic on the right, and you step through the briefing using those tabs at the top. But to get to the register or the briefing change alerting service, there's a button at the top right of the screen for every briefing that says Register for Briefing Updates. And when you click it, it'll bring up a dialog similar to the scheduled email briefing. There are a couple differences. So for a scheduled email briefing, you're requesting a full briefing sent at a specific time. For this briefing change alerting notification, you select a range of time that you want these notifications. And you can start right after the briefing. Start sending me emails anytime something comes up. Or you can delay that an hour or two and say, well, start sending me an hour before my flight. That's when I want to do it. And so we will queue up anything that's changed, and we will send it to you at that designated time for anything that's changed between the briefing time and when you want these notifications started. And then you also select when you stop wanting to receive these notifications, whether it's at the departure time, your estimated time of arrival, if you have data link or access to email in the cockpit, or you can set a different time if you want. And so after you do that, then you figure out where you want to send the email to, if you want to send it just to yourself or add somebody else or change it. And then similar to the scheduled email, you also select what content you want it to have. And so this isn't the full briefing content. We're not going to send you updates for if a METAR changes or a TAF changes. We'll send you the specific information, predominantly the adverse conditions and the synopsis data. And you can configure that the way you want it. We will save those settings for the next time. But this gives you a way that in the delta time between when you get the briefing and when you take off, now you'll get any of the very significant information. So you check your phone quick. Did I get any emails? If you didn't, then there was no new briefing changes for your flight. And then after you click that, oh, I also wanted to point out, you may have noticed this little video icon in the top right. So we have these scattered throughout our website in the places where I guess it's beneficial to learn more. And so we've created videos that'll walk through in more detail than I can to this evening how to use the different services. So you'll see them on the ICAO page, on this page, on several other things, giving you more information on how this stuff works, and just a video that helps you step through it at your own pace. So then when you register, you get a dialog that says it's successful. And then you'll get an email if anything changes. Otherwise, you're good to go. All right,
Great.
Next topic. Wanted to talk about unmanned aircraft systems, operations.
Well, your timing is really good. You know, here we are in the holiday season. It was, I think, 18 months ago, April Fool's Day, I think last year, when Amazon hit the news with the idea of delivering packages via drones. And you know, regardless of if we thought that was true or not at the time, obviously, you know, they're taking steps towards working with the FAA to find commercial viability there. But what I'm getting at is not Amazon delivering via UAS. I'm getting at the fact that FAA, via Amazon and all the other retailers, Walmart, etc., FAA thinks there are going to be thousands, tens of thousands of small, some cases, maybe not so small, unmanned aerial systems aircraft systems being delivered to homes across the world for holiday gifts. So all of a sudden, I think we're on the precipice of a dramatic uptick in the amount of UAS operations going on, both in our national airspace system and elsewhere, but in particular, pilots starting to worry more and more about the, how the ordinary general aviation pilot is supposed to interface in the modern airspace system with the possibility of these other types of new aircraft out there.
Yep. And so Lockheed Martin's taking very proactive approaches, trying to help the FAA with their ability to integrate with the general aviation community and the UAS operating community. And so we have a couple capabilities that I'll show on the website tonight. The first one is the UAS operating area overlay. And this is targeted for the GA to understand where these operating areas are.
Great.
You may be familiar with the NOTAMs that say there's UAS operating areas in certain locations. And the NOTAMs you get the text for. And so what we've done is we've taken that and built a graphic on that, and plus added additional capability to it. We've got kind of two main supports for UAS operations. There's the actual operator, giving them the tools to help file and plan their operations, but then also the general aviation, letting them know where these operations are, letting them know how they could potentially impact their flights. So I'll focus on the latter. So with this UAS operating area overlay, this is accessible from the main menu under the UAS main menu. If you hover over it, we have different selections in the UAS operating areas. I'm going to click CONUS. Just before that, for the UAS operators themselves, there's that planning selection, a couple selections above, but I'm not going to go into that in detail. There's more information on the website and videos for that. So I'm going to go into the CONUS view. And so what this does is it brings up a new window showing a graphical depiction of all the UAS operating areas depicted. And these are the ones that came from NOTAMs and also the ones that were submitted by UAS operators on the website.
Okay.
And so this is an interactive window. You can zoom in, you can pan. I don't have a graphic for it, but there's a button sectionals in the top right. So you can turn on the sectionals underlay and be able to see in detail where these are. So this is the graphic. And again, we've got the video here, which will explain it in much more detail than I have time for this evening. And so this is an example of zooming in. So you can zoom into an area, and then you can click on this little purple circle, and it'll give you the information for the UAS area. And in this case, it came from a NOTAM out of DCA with a 2.5-mile radius up to 3,000 feet. So with this graphic, it gives you the ability to drill down to a little bit more information to see what this operating area is, where it is, and the details about it. But in addition to just being able to see the UOAs, we've taken this graphic, this interactive map, a couple steps further. I'm going to show you some additional things you can do with this graphic. With the adverse condition button, you can overlay different adverse conditions. This includes TFRs, weather elements like convective sigmets, airmets, and different data that you can overlay on top of it. Select what you want, and then click OK, and we will add that to the graphic. And you'll notice that in addition to the purple circles, we also have some red and blue circles. And those are identifying the TFRs. The red's either VIP or active. The blue is scheduled. I don't see any firefighting now. And then next thing, time filtering the UOAs. So I'm not able to show it this evening, but there's a way you can time filter the UOAs. If I want to see which UAS operating areas are active now, or active in the next 2 hours, or active tomorrow, you can click this button and it'll filter down. The reason I can't show it tonight is because I've got the adverse conditions displayed, and we don't time filter adverse conditions for safety reasons. So it's either show adverse conditions or give a time filter, find a time slice of UOAs. And like I said, there's more information on the videos on that capability. And then the other button is Configure Map, and this will allow you to add different overlays. For the static data, the published data, airports, routes, nav aids. In this case, I'm going to select the restricted special use airspace. And when you select it, here I have it zoomed in. Now you can see those also drawn on the graphic. And then the last is a checkbox for showing the UOA and adverse condition labels. And this gives you the ability to get more detail without having to click on the item. It'll show the label. The 1155 is the TFR around DCA. And then the UAS operating areas have some of the information. It has the NOTAM number and then the elevation, the most important things that you want to see at a glance. And the other thing I want to point out from this window, this is, you don't have to be logged in to have access to it. Just by going to the home page, you can select UAS and then CONUS and have this window. Okay. But the other thing that's great about this window is it updates. Every minute, it'll refresh the data. So if you have new TFRs that come in or new airmets that come in, you'll see a graphical depiction. And once they expire, they'll go away. But it gives you a real-time view of what's going on. And this is great. We've had users that just zoom into the state and they can see the UOAs coming in and out. We've also had pilots who just leave it up and then get a quick view of what the airmets are in the location. And again, what labels you turn on will save, so the next time you come in, those same things will be set. So this is the UAS operating area pop-up windows, some neat things you can do with it. The next thing I'm going to show is how UAS operating areas wind up in briefings. So in addition to displaying them in the graphics, we've also started including them in briefings. And this is because they could potentially be important to flights. And you can see we've added a new tab at the top called UOA. And in here we show the UAS operating areas that are relevant to the flight. And by relevant, we mean that it's within 25 miles from the route. But we only include it if it's within a certain altitude distance from your flight path. So we'll include all the UAS operating areas if they're within 4,000 feet of your planned altitude.
Makes sense. If I'm at 210 en route and you've got something from the surface to 3,000, probably don't really care.
Yep, exactly. Except around the airports. So we'll do the altitude filtration en route, but we'll include everything by the departure and the destination, and if you have alternates. So we include everything within a 10-mile radius. Because even if it's a lower altitude while you're at takeoff or coming in for landing, you care about things more. So that's how we decide which UAS operating areas to include in the briefing. The next thing I wanted to talk about this was, in this sample we've got three areas, and I have it selected to the third one. You can see it on the right, the circle that has the little highlights on it. And so this is what you get as you use the arrows to step through. And we treat this like we do the other weather and TFR data in the briefing, where we do this next-gen briefing logic on it. We correlate the estimated time you're planning on passing it based on your projected speed, the winds, the flight level, the time to figure out when you're projected to pass it. And then we correlate it with when it's projected to be active. And if it's active at the same time that you're flying past it, we'll show it as red. If it's within 60 minutes of when you're passing it, we'll show it as yellow, as in this case. I guess we're 58 minutes off. But if it's more than an hour out, if it's going to turn hot an hour or more after you pass it, we show it as green. Or if it was expired an hour before you pass it. So we use this extrapolated time based on winds and everything like we do with the next-gen briefing in order to give you the information that you want in your briefing. So, and this is predominantly tell me what it is, tell me where it is, and tell me how it impacts my flight. And so in the graphics, you can see where it is. It's to the left of the route, quite a few miles off the route. And then how it affects my flight, you can see both the distance and the time delta. So in this case, it's almost an hour, and it's pretty far off your route, so you probably won't see a drone in that area when you're flying.
But I might be looking over my left shoulder every now and then out of curiosity as I'm flying a beam it, because you're going to tell me there in those yellow yellow boxes what time I'll begin to be a beam that circular area that UOA, and what time I'll cease to be a beam it. Yep. Exactly. All right. So that's just a highlight of some of the capabilities we have for UAS and how the submitted UAS areas, whether it's from NOTAM or from the website, are presented to pilots and what you can do with them. Next, I'm going to show some of the pilot tools, some of the additional things that we haven't had a chance to show in the webinars yet. The first one, this one I'm excited about. This is, I was answering the emails from the last webinars that was saying, well, how do you display the route? And so now we finally have this capability. We had it on the shelf and we couldn't announce it last time, but now it's out there. With display route capability, when you're filling out your flight plan, before actually getting a briefing or doing anything else, you can display this route right away using this map button. And so what we'll do is we'll take the route and we'll expand it. If you've got airways in it or other information, we will then verify that it's a valid route and then expand it and then display it on the graphic. And as an aside, when we looked at this in rehearsal, it occurred to me, but I didn't mention, one of the frustrations I often have is if I'm using not a bleeding edge brand new airplane that allows you to enter Victor Airways in your flight plan, and frankly the opposite is more common. It's more common to have an airplane with a GPS where you cannot enter Victor Airways. It's often frustrating to, on one hand, have an advanced system where you can file with Victor Airways, but then when you go to enter your flight plan into the GPS box, you need to know all the fixes where all the turns are, all the dog legs on that Victor Airway stretch of segments. And the fact that I can have the Victor Airways compactly listed in my flight plan here, but then hit this button and see the expanded version, that gives me exactly what I need to enter into my my /G navigator in my aircraft. Oh, great. That's actually a big time saver. That's great. So you have those fixes in the... No, I need the fixes. Oh, I mean, so you can program in the fixes and the... Oh, yeah. Okay, you just can't do the airways? Exactly. Oh, great. I never even thought about that. A more modern aircraft, Garmin G1000 and up, for example, you can say, I'm going to cross VOR XYZ. And then it says, well, what's next? Well, instead of saying what's next is another fix or, like an intersection or a VOR, you can say Victor 3. And once you've crossed, this VOR, and then you've told the box you're going to get on Victor 3, then it just asks you, okay, you're getting on Victor 3, where are you getting off? And it's like you scroll down like 10 exits down I-95 and say I'm getting off at, VOR PDQ, which happens to be 800 miles south via half a dozen flight turns in that Victor Airway sequence. But if I don't have a unit that knows what Victor Airways are, I need these fix names. I need every fix name where there's a flight change. Yeah, so that would help you out here. Absolutely. But I think we have that same information in Nablog if you wanted to do that, but this gives you a graphical depiction. Exactly. And we've heard complaints about entering a route, getting a briefing, only to realize they typed something wrong and it
dog legs across the state.
Where you fat finger one VOR,
Mm-hmm.
and you realize that there's a segment that takes you 1,000 miles to the left and then 1,000 miles to the right back on course. Exactly.
And this gives you that ability to check things before you escalate further, or to do some advanced planning to make sure that what you're looking at is what you are planning.
Sanity check.
Yep. And you click OK. And we have that map button in a few different places. When you do the plan a route, you can select different routes. You can graphically depict it from there. The next item I wanted to talk about is the pilot history. And this came from pilots' requests. They want to know, what did I do on my website? What was the information that I received? When did I do it?
Mm-hmm.
We've implemented the pilot history, and this is available by clicking the Flight Planning and Briefing menu and then selecting History. And what this will do is it will show you a page that includes 15 days of your history. So everything you've done over the past 15 days will be here. If you've got, I think we show 15 at a time, and so if you have more items than that, you use the arrows to either go back or forward.
This is actually really cool. I want to stop you right there. One of the contacts we'll get here in the PIC on occasion is, less helpful is, I filed a flight plan and I went to pick it up and it was never there. Or more helpful, but worse yet, I had a problem where, FAA claims I didn't file a flight plan and I did, or something where you might want something substantive to be able to at least either A, indicate what you did, or B, prove to another agency what you did as far as filing or picking up, activating, or closing, more critically, a flight plan. So this is actually a critical improvement in a pilot's ability to view and maybe produce on request an audit trail. So if I see that we can go back 15 days, but even if a pilot needed to print something out from this list and then have it on hand if they needed it for whatever reason, and I don't want to elaborate, but for whatever reason, this is a really handy thing to have. So this take note, folks that are listening, that this is a new thing where you can actually have insight into what you've done as far as your interface with flight service in a self-serve manner that you may not have really been aware of or had in the past.
And pilots that are training, they want to show how much time they've done and make sure they've gone through the activities.
Exactly.
So we showed just this table. It shows the event time and what type of event it was. And like I showed the scheduled email briefing. That'll wind up in here. Filing a flight plan, getting area briefs, activating and closing. But the next thing I want to point out was this source column, and this one's really interesting. Typically, you go to a website and you see the information that's on the website. But we are flight services. We are Lockheed Martin Flight Services. We do both the website and the specialist-based. So when you call up and activate a flight plan, when you call on the radio, that's still us. It's the same company, same underlying system, the same technology. So the source column indicates whether you got this information or had this transaction on the website or doing it via flight services. FS21 is indicative of a specialist performing an action. So the lower level, these are activating, closing, and canceling flight plans done by calling a specialist. But since it's logged into your account, since I have a profile, and I correlated using the same name and email address and phone number, now my actions calling a specialist are visible to me on the website in Pilot History.
Excellent.
And then you'll notice that some of these, they have a view button. Like the area briefing, you can do a view, but then other ones don't. The activate, the cancel, and these things they don't really have additional information. But the stuff that does have additional information for it, like filing a flight plan, when you click view, it'll give you all the information on a flight plan. Basically everything that was in the flight planning form as you filed the flight plan is now available. So you have this history. You can go back, and if you did want to print it, you'd want to save it, you want to keep a history of everything you've done. You take it off our website, you record it, and we're only allowed to provide 15 days worth of data for different reasons. But within the 15 days you want to get it, you have 2 weeks to go in and look at the data or review it. And so that's available. And if we clicked view on a briefing, you would actually get the whole briefing content. All the text that was in the briefing, all the markup color coding that we've done with the text on the left-hand side, highlighting different stuff, that's now in the briefing. So you can see that in the history. So if you want to go back after a flight and say, I didn't realize how turbulent it was, you can go back and see what it was in the briefing, what you could have learned after the fact.
Oh, that's what MOD-SEV means.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, the next thing I want to show is the pilot tip card. And this is a neat thing. We typically hand them out at venues to pilots. And this is available from our homepage. And this is before you even log in. Down in the bottom right-hand side where it says Resources, under Phone Numbers and Quick Steps, there's a pilot tip card section. And from here you can download a printable pilot tip card. And so what a pilot tip card is, and we put this together, it's basically a two-sided sheet that you can tri-fold and bring it with you. And there's some cool stuff on here, and pilots like it, and it's helpful both from a website and a calling flight services perspective. And just a couple things I wanted to point out. PIREPs, pilot reports, one of the most important things a pilot can do to help another pilot understand the weather conditions. We give the cheat sheet here, what information you need to have marked with an asterisk, and what information is optional. And so trying to take some of the fear out of submitting a PIREP, here are the things you need. So when you call up or radio in, you can give it easily, you know what you're going to say before you have to present it. In the middle column, this is another cool thing. So when you call 1-800-WEATHER BRIEF, you can say your state name and eventually get routed by a voice. There's a shortcut. So if you don't want to say it, or if you're next to a helicopter and it can't hear, you can use the keypad and you can type in 651 to get to New Jersey. Just as a little shortcut, time saver. So if you typically fly out of Jersey, when you call 1-800-WEATHER BRIEF, immediately 651 and you get where you want. And then the other side where I'm not showing, it's a cheat sheet for filing a flight plan, just telling you what information you need. So when you call up, you have it on hand. You don't have to go scramble on the phone.
Right, and we're both smiling right now because in rehearsal I went through the laborious process of digging through my wallet to show you, Joshua, that I still carry a laminated version of the domestic flight plan form with all the blocks in order, so that I can try to give that information to a briefer in an efficient manner. Obviously, you know, your specialists are so good at absorbing the information coupled with knowing who I am based on my caller ID when I call you, that I don't have to give all the information, and I don't always have to necessarily give it in the proper order. They're used to that as well.
Yep.
But it's always handy to have that format, that flow in front of you, especially if you're either not that comfortable or not that familiar with filing flight plans all the time, or also just to give you an opportunity to look at the form and review and make sure you have everything you need to be able to provide before the mic is hot, whether it's in the airplane or on the phone, to give the specialist everything they need. So that's always a handy thing to have.
Yep, and that's what we tried to do with this, just a cheat sheet to help out with the different activities. So those were some of the pilot tips. The next I wanted to get into was the app vendor services. And I imagine a lot of people aren't familiar with what this is. But really, in addition to doing the 1-800-WEATHER-BRIEF phone number and the 1-800-WEATHERBRIEF.com website, we also do web services, our third core capability. And what web services are, it's a computer-to-computer data link with different parties. And in this case, we have two major sets. And you'll recognize some of these logos, I imagine. But we do flight planning and briefing and different flight planning-based applications, which you can see here on the left. And then we also do position reporting and data link, where you see those on the right. And so we partner. We have our web services available, and they're free. They're part of what we offer. We don't charge anything for them. And we make them available to trusted parties, and it's up to those third parties to figure out what to do with them. And this has been really neat over the past couple of years, because once we did this, we started seeing vendors, these apps, these websites doing some great things with our capabilities beyond what we would do, or integrating into stuff that they typically do. So we're providing the back-end service. We're providing the access into the NAS, the flight plan filing, the content of the briefings, and that type of information. We're also integrating it in with our advanced capabilities, which I'll talk a little bit about. But what's really powerful here is that when you use an app, it comes into Lockheed Martin Flight Services. If you use a website, it comes into Lockheed Martin Flight Services. If you use the phone, the same thing. It's all the same system. So if you file a flight plan with one of these apps, and then you call up 1-800-WEATHER-BRIEF, they immediately have that full information. It's not delayed. It's not missing route information. It's the specialist. It's the same system under the covers that's doing all of these services.
Great.
And then on the right, the position reporting, I'll get into the details of how this is beneficial to the pilots. But just wanted to give a little bit of context is that when you have an app that does this flight planning or this briefing type of capabilities or these alerts, quite often they come through us and it's the same integrated system on the back end. But what it does is it provides a flexibility for these apps and these websites to really build upon these core capabilities that we have to make it even more beneficial for the pilot.
So especially if, among other things, they're using an app, let's say, that has a user interface and their stored data that they have already been using for 3 or 4 years and are comfortable with and would rather not transition away from it. And if it's largely transparent that they happen to be interacting with Lockheed at first, at least, then the benefit is that they haven't had any disruption, and further down the road they might have additional features brought to them. And I know you'll show me some ideas of what those additional features that the vendors could bring here shortly. But it's only at worst just as good as what you had, and then only gets better from there.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really neat to see the technologies expand and grow. And once we've made these services available, they've ballooned. And it's not just Lockheed doing it. It's all these companies that are aggregating this data and putting it together and putting different faces on it. And then we had a bunch of comments in the last webinars that says, well, does my device do this? And why doesn't my website do this? And we make the services available, but it's up to those vendors which aspects they want to integrate. It's not an all or nothing. Some people can do one capability and not do others. So if there's concerns about why doesn't my app do this or why isn't my app listed, you're much better off asking that company than us, because we have the services. Once we trust you, we'll give access to the data. So it's not up to us what the vendors do with it at this point. So I wanted to get into just a couple of the things that we do. And this is not a real app. I want to admit I made this with PowerPoint, and I wouldn't actually fly a 747 into the SFRA going to Hilton Head. But it's basically to give a visual of what kind of capabilities we have. So with an app or a website, when you have the ability to file or activate a VFR flight plan or close a flight plan, that's quite often coming through us. And so that's one of our core capabilities, is to be able to do the flight plan action. And the benefit, like I mentioned, is now Flight Services has it. It's immediately available. Specialists have all the information on it. The next thing is the next-gen briefings. And we do the briefings in general. And we historically have done the 50-page text briefing. And if you're familiar with our website, we've really evolved that from a text-only briefing to this interactive graphics with intersection times and color coding and organization. And what we've done just recently is made all of that technology available via web services. So what we show on our website is available to vendors, where they can take that graphical depiction, the intersection times, the color coding, the is it active while I'm passing it or not, the METAR summarization, all that technology, the organization, the filtering that we do is available via web services. So now vendors have started picking up on this and brought this into their own apps. So if you see briefings that all of a sudden are more interactive and have these graphics, it quite possibly could come from us. And so that's one of the neat things that we've done. And one of the cool things about this is we're limited with the single website, how great we can make it. We make the data available. Now apps have it, different websites have it. They can integrate it in different ways, and really allowing these third-party vendors, the people that are the front end, to really take it to the next level. So this is Next Gen Briefings is available. We also do the adverse condition alerting. So like we do for the BCAS, or the briefing change alerting service, where we let you know if something's changed with the briefing. We also do it for flights where you can get notification. And we historically have done this by email. We'll send you an email personally. But this is where we send it to the vendor so they can display it in their app. And in this case, it's up to the vendor how they want to display it, whether it's graphically, they put a notice up, they color it purple, whatever they want to do to it. But it's the data that we're providing that says, hey, this flight that we have filed has this new adverse condition, and here are the details about the adverse condition and how it affects the flight. And then the third-party vendor figures out how to incorporate that into the briefing or into their app or website.
Why do you have to drop a thunderstorm right on top of us? What's up with that?
What do you mean?
The
air mat? Yeah.
I'm kidding.
I think it's too small to be an air mat.
It is pretty small.
It's PowerPoint.
Case in point.
Yeah. So I didn't want to show any particular vendor site for favoritism, or and I like drawing pictures. So the next one I wanted to show about was electronically submit a PIREP. And PIREPs, like I mentioned, are one of the most important things a pilot can do to inform other pilots about the actual condition that's currently happening. And historically, they're done either after the flight or via radio. When they're done via radio, you got to switch frequencies, call it in, make sure you get the right information, get the call back, and then go back to your frequency. What we've recently allowed, I guess it was last year, was electronically submit a PIREP. And this is part of our data link where via an app, you can submit a PIREP electronically. And what I have shown here is just a mock-up, just kind of show how easily it could be integrated in. And so you have an app that has your location, it has your time, has your altitude. So I don't even have to put any of that in.
Wow.
Now basically all I have to do is, what's my sky condition or visibility? Well, I've got broken layers. Click that button and then click submit. And we do all of that work under the covers to create the PIREP, to confirm it. But when you electronically submit it, this is a real PIREP. This goes into flight services, it goes into air traffic control, this goes into the NAS, this goes into NWS. This is a PIREP. But more interestingly or somewhat interestingly, is if this is an urgent PIREP, now it becomes an adverse condition. So now when you submit this, now anyone that signed up for the briefing change alerting notification or ACAS, the adverse condition alerting service, will get this as either email, an alert in their app, or an alert on their website saying that there's a PIREP. So now we have this capability where you're flying, you can submit an urgent PIREP, and someone that's 5 minutes behind you in flight can see that same information nearly immediately if they have the different technologies enabled.
It's amazing. A closed loop or end-to-end connectivity, however you want to describe it. Yeah, the idea that that PIREP could be not just so drastically important, but used in such a timely fashion.
And there's no human in the loop. There's no, hold on, let me set this up, or wait for the next person to brief. We notice it, and we send it forward. So,
yeah, this is one of the pieces of this presentation tonight that really resonates with me. As an instructor, I always like to demonstrate numerous times to private pilot students what a PIREP is, how to submit one, how it's no big deal if you don't necessarily provide all the items, or maybe you provide some of them out of order. You know, the specialist you speak to on the radio is going to absorb all that information. They want that information. We want to provide that information. And so once you get a pilot over the fear of the unknown, as far as how do I submit a PIREP, the only remaining barrier is, do I want to take the time?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to make the barrier to the effort side of the equation so minimal, as maybe in the future we could have this simple electronic submission form where it knows where you are, and all you have to do is type in at 7 degrees outside, the wind is 240 at 8, and sky clear, and hit submit. I can't imagine that wouldn't have an enormous positive impact on the number of PIREPs in the system.
Oh yeah, and we've got vendors that have started integrating with this, and people that use this, so it's out there. And like in this example, a few clicks, it already knows most of the information. You just report the conditions and click submit. And then I guess the last thing, that right side of the bullet where I was talking about the vendors, right side of the page, the position reporting.
Spider tracks. And,
yeah. So this is all for the surveillance enhanced search and rescue. So Flight Services does search and rescue. When you file a VFR flight plan, you activate it. We expect you to close it when you land. If you don't close it within a certain time after your ETA, we will start initiating search and rescue. But what that is limited to is based on your ETA time. And with Surveillance Enhanced SAR, if you have a position reporting device enabled and you have it configured to set as position reports, we will correlate those position reports with your flight. And if they either stop moving, which is typically bad for a fixed wing, or if they stop reporting, which is mysterious, we will start initiating a search and rescue procedure. Which starts with contacting, and we escalate from there. But what that does is enables us to start the search and rescue much, much quicker. So rather than potentially hours later after you've passed your ETA, we can notice things much earlier. And so if in the unlikely event that something happens, now we have indication of it much, much sooner. So the specialists can start their search and rescue. Additionally, we have much better location information. We know where you were, not somewhere between the departure, destination. We know where you were last reported. So the actual search time, or the search location is much, much smaller, which means the search time to get someone there is much, much quicker because you're not searching this huge area. So this is all targeted on safety. This is all targeting on the extremely unlikely event, but we have you covered. And targeting towards the safety, so the search and rescue can proceed quicker and more accurately. And basically, you get a device. If you have a device, you contact them and you say, yeah, we want you to send your position reports to Lockheed Martin. And then you go to our website and you say, I want to configure my device. We need both parties involved. We're not going to listen to every spot device or every device. It's only the ones that are configured. And then we correlate with your flight. And then once it's there, it's automatic. You file a flight plan. We'll start listening. When you land safely at your destination, we'll stop listening. So it's only in the case of unusual activity, whether it's a non-reporting or loss of movement.
That's a wonderful way to narrow down, as you said, among other things, the search radius. I was in a safety meeting earlier today where we were talking about the some of the dynamics of having to make an off-airport landing, and energy dissipation in the case of landing in a less than optimal landing area, maybe in the forest or trees, and the idea that if you're successful and lucky enough in order to get the airplane on the ground and have the airplane absorb ideally all of the energy in getting to velocity equals zero, and surviving the, for lack of a better word, crash, the last thing you'd like to have happen then would be to be able to safely exit the airplane and then die of exposure before you're found.
Yeah.
And we all know a couple high-profile stories along those lines from the past 5 or 10 years. So, especially for those flying in inhospitable terrain, and we've got inhospitable terrain without decent, safe places to land less than an hour from here on the populated eastern seaboard, much less our friends further west. This is a literally a real lifesaver.
Yep, and it's a partnership between the vendors and us working together. And the other thing I didn't mention for the position reporting devices is we also do data links. So some of them we have the ability to send messages to. We can send the ACAS alerts to the devices. Other ones we can receive an SOS. So you can hit the emergency button on the device and it'll send it to the specialist and they can take action right away. And so you got to contact your vendors to figure out who does what. So that's basically what I wanted to hit tonight. It looks like about right on time. Ran out of time for questions. So
I've got one, actually.
Oh.
Didn't think you were going to get off that easy, did you? Come on now. We've had a few folks ask this evening regarding if they obtain a weather brief in ForeFlight. Is there a way for that brief, or would that brief be added to the history in the history list on 2000wxbrief.com? So
we do have the capability to do credentialed filing and briefing, which would allow you to see the data on the website. Currently, ForeFlight doesn't do credentialed. They do anonymous. It's talking technical, but they don't have it exactly tied to your profile at this time.
Okay.
We have the service available, so it's more of a question for them than
you've already gone down that road earlier this evening, which is oftentimes the question is more germane to the vendor, is really where you're going here.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to point fingers or anything. It's just current capabilities are not implemented such that they're tied together.
Lockheed Martin has a giant library of function calls of different web service functions that they can expose and make available to these vendors. And again, to build on what you said earlier this evening, the vendors can pick and choose which parts they do or don't want to use. And I don't think there's any harm in saying if there's a particular feature that either a user, a pilot member out there may be aware of or not aware of, whether or not it exists. Regardless, go to your provider, go to whatever your app provider is, and ask them. Submit bugs and features to them. Ask them for new things, because if Lockheed provides it, the vendor can implement it. Yep. And if Lockheed doesn't provide it, the vendor may in turn go to Lockheed and ask for that new service to be provided, and it could be a positive impact for the greater good across the board as well.
Exactly. Thank you, Ferdy.
So there's no harm in asking is really what I'm getting at.
Yep. Oh, and I did want to mention, I listed a bunch, and we showed a bunch of icons. Those are, I don't know if it's even the complete list, and we've got workings with other ones. So if you don't see your app vendor, your favorite website, more than welcome to reach out to them and have them contact us, and we have support dedicated towards this web service interface. All
right, last question.
Uh-oh.
This is an easy one for you because we discussed it not long before we turned the mics on this evening. I've got another pilot, another member out there asking the question I asked 2 sessions ago. Tell me about the perspective on whether or not a Lockheed app makes sense or would happen.
So at this point, we don't have any plans to make an app. And there's multiple reasons for this. We would much rather focus on the core functionality. Let us continue to increase the briefings. Let us continue to integrate new technologies. Let us do that, and let the other vendors that are great, the vendors that have these $39 or $69 or $99 a year subscriptions, figure out the best way to get that information to the pilot. And we want to focus on the actual underlying technology. We love this integration between flight services, air traffic, web service, data communication that we have now. And at this point, we're not looking to make an app at all. We've got the website, and a lot of our strategy was put it on the website and then make it available to web services to let other people run with it, and they do typically much better than we do.
Do what they do best.
Yeah, and let us do what we do best. So at this point, we don't have an app in the works.
Okay. Well, I think we've run the gamut here. We've had a really comprehensive and well-received webinar series here. This is the third in the series of 3 that we've done this fall here in 2015 with Lockheed Martin, with Joe Daniele, Joshua Sessions, and Heidi Williams from Lockheed, helping us to understand and really appreciate many of the new developments have gone from, as you said, just merely a year ago, I think it was, when the website was far less feature-laden, to the point where we are now, where it has such advanced features that in many cases aren't available anywhere else. They're on 1-800-WXBrief.com. That's 1-800-WXBrief.com. You've got to check it out, everyone. I've been to the website more and more as time has gone on over the past 6 or 9 months. And it's more and more becoming, not just me, but for many of my friends and fellow pilots, the first go-to tool, and maybe in some cases the only go-to tool for planning and filing. It really is wonderful. Looking forward, of course, we've already mentioned this in the prior session. You've also got support for both the domestic and the ICAO flight plan filing in there, which is something that's going to, over the next year, become more and more of interest to pilots here who to date are only flying and filing domestically.
Yep. And I have that as a reminder, currently targeted for October of 2016. And we have videos, and we've got a help video that'll help walk you through all the intricacies of the form and help you learn how to do it. And what Joe Daniele was saying before, it's really not that scary. Once you get used to it, once you get it configured, and the fact that you can save it as a favorite, your equipment's not going to change. Your other information isn't going to change. So once you get over that hurdle, you start using it, it's really not that bad.
Yeah, as a brief aside, the scary part is, how do I construct my equipment string? How do I construct my surveillance code string?
And we've done a lot to help you with that through automation and also the videos. So.
A, you're going to help me figure out what my codes are. B, once I construct them with your help on your website, you're going to save them. So once they're saved, the process of filing a flight plan is basically the same, regardless of if we're talking domestic or ICAO. Largely, you guys make it largely or entirely immaterial which way I want to go.
And that's our intent. We'll continue to work with the FAA as that progresses. Just before we go, I wanted to say that we do have website help available 24/7, both via phone and email. We have the contact information on the website. It's separate from the specialist in the same facility, but if you have a weather or flight planning, you call 1-800-WEATHER-BRIEF. If you've got a problem with the website, you call the support desk with the Contact Us page. We also have video help on YouTube channel, both the little videos that I have scattered throughout the website, but then also we've got the channel which will walk you through the more complicated things, the API, KO, flight planning forum, and highlight some of the advanced capabilities that we just haven't had the time to in these webinars. And then I was told to tell everyone to follow us on Twitter at 1-800-WEATHER-BRIEF.
Excellent. Excellent. We did have one question just come in I wanted to ask, and then we'll close. Someone asked where the prior webinars are available. They are also available, besides the resources where Joshua mentioned, they're also available on AOPA's website at www.aopa.org. If you hover over the Pilot Resources tab across the top navigation bar, if you go in Pilot Resources, you'll find a link down the left side for AOPA webinars. You can find the first and second installment of the series there, and the third one you're participating in right now will be there shortly. With that said, I'd like to thank Joshua, Heidi, and Kathy for their time and efforts this evening. It's been a wonderful series. We've had a good time. We've learned a lot, and hopefully we'll be seeing you again around here in the near future, Joshua.
All right. Well, we really thank you for having us. It's been fun, and I hope the pilots have learned a lot and know where to go to get more information.
I hope they do. 1-800-WXBrief.com. Thanks for joining us here in our Pilot Information Center. You can always contact us Monday through Friday at 1-800-USA-AOPA. That's 800-872-2672, and then press option 2 on your phone to reach us. Or you can email your questions to us here at pilotassist@aopa.org. And finally, don't forget to check out our website for more information at www.aopa.org. Thanks. We'll see you.